This episode of the Dorking Out Show podcast is brought to you by Los Pollos Hermanos. At Los Pollos Hermanos, the finest ingredients are brought together with love and care, then slow cooked to perfection. Yes, the old ways are still the best ways at Los Pollos Hermanos, but don't take our word for it. One taste and you'll know. Los Pollos Hermanos, we cook for you like an old friend.
And the letter R, because you can't spell raining without R. Oh my God, it's raining. Let's everybody freak out and drive like idiots.
Houston, flight is go.
Mila, let's go.
From Assignment X, Amalgamated Storytelling, and thesoniashow.com, it's Dorking Out with Sonia Mansfield and Christopher Allen Smith.
Welcome to episode 17 of Dorking Out, a podcast for people who like to dork out about stories and the stories and culture that you love. That means movies and TV, books and podcasts, and pretty much everywhere else we find stories that interest us. This is the Scared of Mascots edition. With me today is my co-host, professional writer, and author of The Sonia Show, Sonia Mansfield.
Hey there.
Hello.
With me today is my co-host, Emmy Award-winning filmmaker and nerd author, Christopher Allen Smith. On this week's episode, we talk about movies that scare us the most that are not technically scary movies. Then we're going to review Christopher Guest's new movie, Mascots, which just came out on Netflix last week. Then we talk about what it is we like and don't like about reviews and reviewers and how to find a review you like. All that, plus our favorite headlines coming up.
Want more dorking out with Chris and Sonia? Well, there are a few simple things you can do. Share this program with a friend. We're assuming you have friends. It's easy. Just go to dorkingoutshow.com and you'll find our podcast links, our SoundCloud account, our YouTube links, our Facebook links, our Twitter links, our Tumblr links, and all our other links. And links. Grab one of those links and get to sharing. The more people listen, the more we make. Make all your friends envious with the cool podcasting choices you've made as a modern trendsetter. Our audience research shows the Dorking Out Show podcast audience is the smartest, most attractive, least prone to baseless flattery in the entire podcasting world. So get those links and get to sharing. Now, on with the show. Topic 1. Scary movies. Movies that scare us. We're kind of continuing on. We're going to be talking about some scary movies throughout the month of October. No one knows why. We had a fantastic discussion with Patrick Bromley last week about real scary movies. This one is movies that freak us out because we all have those movies that freak us out and just jiggle something inside of us when on the surface, they're not scary movies at all. Or, they're definitely not horror movies or thrillers or whatever. And the reason why I say definitely not these kinds of movies is because Sonia's first movie has me completely baffled. Sonia Mansfield, can you tell me what you find so scary about Field of Dreams?
Now, I know that people are like, Field of Dreams. Well, it's because there's ghosts in it. But that's not it at all. Okay, I actually really love this movie. But there is a scene in this movie that really scares me and it has warped my mind. I
think I know what it is. Now that you're saying this, I think I know exactly what you're talking about.
It has completely traumatized me. Okay, so kind of late in the movie, so maybe spoilers for a movie that came out in 1989, Kevin Costner's daughter is sitting on the bleachers watching the game. She's eating a hot dog. And then she falls off the bleachers and starts choking on the hot dog. And this has messed me up since I saw it in the theater. And now every time I eat a hot dog, every time my son eats a hot dog, I think of that scene and I am totally worried that I am or my son will choke on a hot dog.
No, I totally
This is not,
get
it is not a scary movie. It has totally traumatized me.
Now that you say that, I completely 100% agree. And for me, that was one of those moments, one of the things that people without kids hate to hear from people with kids. And I was like this before I had kids, so I feel free in generalizing like that. Is, oh, you'll understand when you have kids. And it's the most condescending,
right,
self-congratulatory BS that a lot of parents say. But unfortunately for single people, it's so 100% true.
This scene runs through my head multiple times a week.
Exactly.
Like not because my kid's eating that many hot dogs, but like anytime he's like walking with food or I'm like, oh God, don't run with food. Like you're going to fall and choke.
Right. Exactly.
Get it out of my head.
It's like, when you're a kid and you watch, or like when you're an adult and you watch The Wizard of Oz and you see the flying monkeys and they're kind of creepy.
Right.
And then you go through some sort of, so for when I saw Field of Dreams, that's kind of what that scene was like. It's like scary, but, not insane. It's just like unpleasant and it comes out all right. So it's scary. But after you have kids, you go back and watch that movie and it's not like, oh, seeing the flying monkeys again, they're a little creepy. It's like, oh my God, this is as scary as the chestburster scene in Alien. This is like, when did this scene get so scary?
Yeah. I think this topic is so funny because last week we talked about scary movies with Patrick Bromley from F This Movie. And one of the movies on your list was Schindler's List, which is not technically a horror movie, but it is very horrifying.
That's true.
I really could have put Schindler's List on this list. It is a really scary movie.
That is true.
I've been thinking about it a lot since last week's conversation about the movies that horrify us, but are not horror movies.
Yeah, and I think for me, technically, as you said that, I said, well, maybe I should have used Schindler's List this week. But Schindler's List is, I think, meant to scare people. It's meant to drive a big dollop of fear into people that, hey, if things get out of control, and this has no relevance to anything going on in the world right now, if things get out of control, bad stuff can happen.
Yeah.
So anyway,
what's your pick? What's one of your? We each picked two. So
my pick is a very old man pick, kind of. It is Adam McKay's The Big Short, starring Ryan Gosling and a million other people.
I still haven't seen it.
It's a good movie, and what it's about is everything that happened leading up to the housing bubble and the meltdown of how banks tried to come up with clever little business practices and things that they could sell to clients and divide up mortgages in a million different ways and sell them off, and and they tried to be very clever and try to put a lot of deep math into it. In fact, a lot of NASA rocket scientists have gone to work on Wall Street because they basically take their deep level of calculus and math knowledge and can make 100 times more money, figuring out ways to program computers and figuring out ways to divide up the market and make money on every little thing going through Wall Street. Anyway, what's so scary about this movie for me, and this is kind of me as a homeowner, and if you don't own a home or you're under, 40, 45, feel free to skip over my choice here. Because it's just like the idea that I could buy a house, be living in it with my family, and then a couple of bags from back east can get a clever little idea in their head, not really understand what they're doing, and destroy the entire market that assigns value to my home and could wreck my financial life when all I'm doing is I'm doing my job, I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, and some Weisenheimer from a million miles away can, drop a neutron bomb onto the American economy and wreck so many people's lives from not even really understanding what they're doing is just terrifying.
I don't think this pick makes you sound like an old man, but I think you using the word Weisenheimer does.
That's right. No, that definitely does it. That's a fantastic word. Weisenheimer is unfortunately a quite useful term that more people should use. So, but anyway, yeah, it's just scary seeing how people that are just paying attention and kind of doing their homework can see it. It's a Cassandra. A story of Cassandra. They saw what was coming. They tried to warn people. They tried to do the right thing. Nobody listened to them, and this freight train just drove through all of our lives in 2007, 2008, and it was nuts. It is a fantastic movie. I think it won Best Oscar for screenplay. Adapted screenplay, which is kind of quietly the best. Usually, the movie that wins for screenplay, it really is the best movie of the year.
Right.
So anyway,
I need to see it.
Yeah, it's good. It's kind of very dense, but they do a lot of clever things in stepping away and kind of breaking the fourth wall and just talking straight to the audience, and then they go back to the story and then back to explaining things. So it's one of these things where you always hear like, oh, people don't understand that. They don't understand economics. They don't understand this. They do. If you take the time to figure out This American Life, Gimlet Media, very that's a podcasting term for you podcasters at home. To kind of explain something complex in simple terms, you can explain anything, and this movie does it, and it's fantastic. And the thing that's so scary about it is they kind of reveal at the end that the practices that got us all in trouble, A, haven't really been fixed, and B, the things that got us all in trouble, they're kind of starting up again, because these banks are just relentless about squeezing every nickel out of every corner of the world they can. So they're kind of going back to some of these dumb practices that got us in trouble. So
it is scary, the idea that through no fault of your own.
Exactly.
That's you
the
could
thing.
Lose everything.
You can lose everything, or you don't lose everything because you're still paying for your house, but it's, worth half of what it was worth.
Right.
Or a third of what it was worth, and you didn't do anything. So yeah, it's a fantastic movie. It's a creepy movie. It's a depressing movie, much like Schindler's List. So I guess I'm developing a theme here, which is everything's awful. The world is trying to kill you.
Well,
as I say to my sons,
that certainly ties into my pick, my second pick, which is everybody is awful and it's scary out there, which is the movie Kids from 1995. Right. I was 24, I think, when I saw this movie. So yeah, it came out in 95. So I was 24. I've always been like, sometimes I can be a very naive person. So I remember seeing this movie and being horrified that people would behave this way. Like,
right.
It really made me feel like there are people who do these things. And it was just awful. And for anyone who hasn't seen Kids, oh, you're so lucky. Kids was like basically the movie. It was like a day in the life of like a group of teenagers in New York City. And they just like have sex and do drugs and commit crimes. And it's like the height of the AIDS epidemic in the mid 90s.
Right.
And there's like a couple of lead characters, but one of them is this boy. I think his name was Telly or something. I had to look it up. I didn't remember because I haven't seen the movie since I saw it in the theater.
Right.
But his thing is he likes to have sex with virgins. So the movie opens with this like 16 or 17-year-old boy basically talking a 12-year-old girl into having sex with him.
That's right.
And then like we meet like a different character. We meet Chloe Sevigny. Is that how you pronounce her name?
I think it's Sevigny, but yeah. I could be wrong. I probably am wrong when it comes to describing how to say people's names. Oh yeah, Rosario Dawson's in this. I forgot.
Yeah.
All right, keep going.
So she like goes with Rosario Dawson to like get an STD test, and she learns that she has HIV. She's had sex with one person, this kid Telly, who's infecting like underage girls all through the city. by having sex with only virgins, but he's got HIV. And they're all just like giving each other HIV. And they're all awful to each other.
Yeah.
And it's so horrifying and scary. And I just couldn't believe it when I saw it. I was like, these people are only a few years younger than me.
Yeah. You know, I'm sure. Yeah, I had a rough time with. Wow, it's only an hour and a half. It felt like a 4-hour movie when I watched this. Yeah, I watched it in the theater. It was excruciating.
Yeah.
It was, you know, just. It was almost like, you know, watching the dumb half of your high school class.
Yeah.
Run wild. Like the dumbest guys in any room you're in, get them all together like a dumb all-star team and just let them, you know, give them booze and let them run around New York for a day.
Like Chloe Sevigny, or however you pronounce her name, her character's actually like, from what I remember, she's not a terrible person.
Right.
Like, but kind of everyone around her is.
Yeah.
You know, and then the movie ends with like basically a guy, like, spoiler alert for a movie that's, you know, came out in 95. Someone drugs her and rapes her.
Oh, that's right.
And now that person's infected with HIV. Like, it's just a really disturbing movie. And it was so upsetting to me and scary that I was like, this is out there? You know, it was just made me feel really lucky that I had surrounded myself with people like you when this is not happening to me.
So it's a mixed blessing. But yeah, no, I get it. And I think
scary. I just think it's a really scary movie. And I think if I was, you know, a parent of a teenager, sorry, Smith, I would be really scared.
That's right. Well, that's see the great thing about kids these days is you get them plugged into a computer, you put the computer in their room, and they never leave the house. It's great. Anyway,
we should do a whole segment, parenting tips from Smith.
That's right. Hey, actually, I've screwed up a lot of things in my life, but I feel fantastic about my kids.
You have good kids.
I didn't do a damn thing to make it happen, but I feel great. Anyway, well, you know what? Here's the thing: is Kids is one of those movies, you know, because I watched a lot of independent movies in the '90s, and I actually worked for a magazine called If Magazine for independent film, for our illustrious benefactor.
I worked for that magazine
That's
too.
Right. Anthony C. Ferrante was the editor of that magazine, and so I watched a lot of independent films, and after a while, you know, there was this image of in the 90s and even now that, oh, independent films, they're more real, they're gritty, they tell, you know, they don't tell these Hollywood happy stories, they tell the real deal. But there's, like Hollywood happy romance stories or action movies or, you know, tearjerker dramas or whatever, independent movies fall into kind of their own repeated annoying tropes. There's the dad died, we need you to go get the body and drive it across country.
Right.
Then there was the
Manic Pixie Dream Girl.
There's the Manic Pixie Dream Girl. Then there's in the 90s, it was a lot of coming out stories, which made sense at that time. But then there were movies like Kids, where it's just like, everything sucks, everybody's awful, they do awful stuff, and there's no point.
Yeah.
Now, that might not be... It might be a little cavalier of me to make a judgment about the plot of a movie that I haven't seen in 21 years, but that's not going to stop me.
No, I think you're right.
And it's just, there comes a point where relentlessly expressing the grimness of what's happening, as realistic as that might be, kind of makes it difficult to take in the message and not relate to it. You know, because I don't think movies should try to make everyone relate to them especially if they're examining a very specific subculture.
Well, I don't know what story this movie was trying to tell.
Exactly. Like, and I kind of doubt what they meant to do was, all kids are awful now. But that's kind of the message I got.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, anyway.
Pick.
My next pick, I might be breaking the rules here. I don't know. My next
Again?
pick Well, yeah, exactly. I don't think so because it's not a horror movie, and I don't think it's supposed to be a scary movie. But this movie is mortifying. It is David Fincher's Gone Girl from just a couple of years ago.
So I read the book, but I actually haven't seen the movie.
Now, the movie is
I know
horrifying.
that I always say reading is for suckers, but I actually did read the book and didn't see the movie. It's kind of weird for me.
See, that's the thing. Reading's great, and it wasn't a book I had read, and I watch religiously everything David Fincher does. And this is a movie about a woman who goes missing, and it's one of those things where, I bet the husband did it, and the media descends on the husband, played by Ben Affleck, and the cops descend on the husband, and it looks like that, he's killed his wife, when in reality, she has spent like 6 months or like a year figuring out how can I make it look like I'm dead and my husband killed me and got rid of the body, when in reality I've been squirreling money away and I'm starting a completely new life. And I want my husband. Not only do I want to not live with my husband, not only do I kind of want a divorce, I want him to rot in prison and maybe get the death penalty for this.
Yeah.
And so you have not seen this then, right?
I've read the book.
So what did you? Well, okay. Let me ask you this: What did you think of the story? What did you think of the book?
Well, I liked the book. I thought it was very entertaining. But I can see why it would be a scary movie for some people, because in theory now, when you're marrying somebody, you really love them and you really trust them.
Right.
And the idea that maybe you don't really know them at all, or how far they'll go and the lengths they'll go to hurt you.
Yeah.
Is really scary.
It is. Yes. And the reason I was so scared about this is not because, maybe my wife is secretly going to frame me for her murder when she's not even dead. It's that she thinks out every little detail and comes up with this really awful plan, and every step of it is kind of plausible. Like, if you could get your wife to hate you just a little bit more or just that much, this really could happen.
Right.
And I'm not saying it really could happen. And the idea that you marry someone, and then once you're married to them and get to know them and get closer to them, you realize only by getting this close, only by going through all these years and being around when this person that you've married has kind of let down their guard and shown their inner self, at that point you realize, oh my God, I've married a monster.
Yeah.
And there's one or two marriages that I've encountered. And I suspect that there's one or two marriages that are like this that I just don't know about, that are unbelievably close to this story.
Are you talking about me?
No.
You're talking about me, aren't you?
No. But it's interesting that you would ask. Maybe I am talking about. Maybe you're one of the marriages that I know very little about and just suspect. And there were a couple guys I talked to. I said, hey, I know you love David Fincher. Just
don't see this.
Steer clear of this movie, buddy. I am convinced there's one person I know that if he had seen this movie when it came out, he might have murdered somebody.
Oh dear.
He might have just dropped everything and vanished. He says, I can't risk this. Like, if his wife saw it, and then he probably would have just go, before she gets the chance to hatch a plan like this, inspired by Gone Girl, poof, I'm in the wind, I'm gone.
Well,
and then it would just be like, where did he go? I don't know. He's been gone for 6 months and he's never coming back. And then, one day I would get a postcard from Pensacola, Florida, where there's nothing written on it. But I would just, like Shawshank Redemption style, I would just know, I guess this person who shall remain nameless on this podcast, I guess he ended up in Florida. But
are you talking about yourself?
No, I am not. Definitely I am not. Even though my marriage contains so many secrets. It is fantastic. And listeners of this podcast, definitely do not try to find out the secrets of my marriage. Because,
I don't have any secrets.
Because you could probably destroy me, and it would be awful. And then we would stop doing the podcast.
And you don't want that.
You don't want that.
No,
or maybe I'm just BSing.
Gone Girl is scary to me. The book was anyway, and maybe in the same way that The Shining was scary to me. And I talked about it just a little bit last week about the idea that the person you love turns on you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't think it's cheating to have it on the list. I think it's a thriller. It's not a scary movie.
Yeah.
So I think you're safe.
Well, see, that's the thing. And now that you said that, is The Shining he's kind of going crazy in the supernatural way.
Yeah.
But in this movie, the husband and wife, and I probably should have done research before this to remind myself of the name of the female lead.
It's like Rosamund Pike.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, Rosamund Pike. Fantastic. Anyway, I've seen couples that do this. They'll be driving to a party, and they will be ripping into each other, fighting in the car. They will be saying the worst stuff you could possibly imagine. Stuff that would end any 10 other marriages. They're just going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. Then they get to the party, they walk in, and it's like a switch is flipped. And it's just like, hi, how you doing, or whatever. And usually both people in the couple can't pull it off. So one person is like super fine, everything's fine. And the other person is like a little glum. It's like, hey, Bill, what's going on? Why are you so down? And, I'll tell you later, whatever. And to see that level of two-facedness in people is just to see what they could be doing behind the scenes and then plausibly, convincingly, realistically be doing in front of the scenes or whatever. And just seeing those two things smacked up against each other is just crazy.
Yeah.
So anyway. All right.
Scary stuff.
Scary stuff.
We'd love to hear from our listeners what movies scare them that are not scary movies.
That's right. In fact,
so put it in the comments.
Marcus.
Tweet at us.
You know who you are. You know where you are, Marcus. I believe you said your scary movie was Requiem for a Dream.
Yes.
Now we want to know, what's your scary movie that's not a scary movie? This is just for you, Marcus. All right, on to the next topic. This segment of the Dorking Out Show is brought to you by Bravery. Need to jump onto a French beach and fight Nazis for the next 10 months? Then you need Bravery.
And
Elsinore beer. Beer so good, it's addictive.
Topic 2. Director Christopher Guest's new mockumentary, Mascots, premiered on Netflix last week. And it's about, you guessed it, mascots. The movie tells the story of a variety of mascots as they compete in the World Mascot Competition for the not-so-coveted award, the Fluffies. If it sounds like Christopher Guest's Best in Show, that's because it pretty much is the same thing, except it's not with dogs, it's mascots. I should say right off the bat, I think mascots are really funny. There's something about their cold, dead eyes. They're like fixed, but the like fixed facial expressions while their bodies convey different emotions that makes me laugh really hard.
That's not bad. They're quick, shark-like motions.
Yes.
They're emotionless. No. Anyway, keep going.
I also think it's really funny when mascots fight people, and I really like it when they fight each other. And because I'm a terrible, awful person, I think it's really funny when mascots get hurt, like when they like miss a slam dunk or they fall downstairs or someone kicks them in the balls. So I'm a child. So in a way, this movie was actually made just for me.
You're not wrong. All of that's funny.
I really liked this movie. I laughed a lot while watching it, which is all I can ask from a comedy. I realize that it's the usual, like, Christopher Guest players doing what they do best, and it's even got Christopher Guest reprising his role, Corky St. Clair from Waiting for Guffman.
So that was the same character then?
Yes.
Okay, got it.
Yeah. But I just really, I thought it was really funny. I like that along with these really ridiculous laughs, I think there's like an underlying sweetness to the movie for some of the characters that I really liked. I love the relationship between Parker Posey and her sister, Susan Yeagley. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Right.
I liked how they truly love and support each other. It's really, really sweet. And there's a really good relationship between like a father and son, where it's like a mascot dynasty. Like the great grandfather was the mascot, then the father, and now the son. And the father like has a traditional idea of what he thinks you're supposed to do, and the son wants to freshen it up. And they argue, but you can tell they really care about each other. And I just like that about this movie. Did you like the movie?
I didn't. For me, this movie is right on the edge of indifference and really not liking it.
That is so interesting.
But everything you said,
I really liked it.
Okay, that's cool. That's true. Everything you said is true. I think what it is like Waiting for Guffman, like For Your Consideration, like A Mighty Wind, like Best in Show, like This Is Spinal Tap.
Yeah.
This is kind of like watching like a 90s or 2000s Woody Allen movie. It's like I've seen all these beats before. I've seen all these same people go through these same motions at this same tone better in earlier movies. And it just, this one, and I want to go back and look at them. There's Christopher Guest movies, they always ride this line between laughing at the people that they're talking about and kind of, oh, look at these people. They're putting so much work into this tiny little, theater production, and look at how silly they are, and look at how mundane and mediocre their lives are. So it's always riding this edge of kind of quirky Americana and kind of dismissiveness. And for me, it kind of went over the edge a little bit.
It's interesting.
But two, usually what pulls it back is some really funny moments, some really funny things. And this did have some humor in it, but it was humor I'd kind of seen before. It's like the 20th time you see Woody Allen do his nubbishy little thing and, his little stutters and make his little, throwaway jokes. It's like that joke could be really funny, but I've seen him do it before, so it's not landing with the same kind of punch.
Right.
And for me, this it did the same thing. These kind of setting up all the characters and how they were all of them relentlessly quirky. You could see that, and I believe this is it's come out that this is the way that Christopher Guest worked, is he kind of comes up with some ideas. He gives the character to his actors. They kind of make up a bunch of stuff on their own, and then they kind of improvise it on film, and then he kind of puts it all together.
Right.
Which, and it just seems like when you give a bunch of actors carte blanche to say, come up with some crazy nutty backstory for yourself, and I'll turn the camera on and interview you as though you're this person, it becomes kind of, I don't want to say cartoony, but there becomes this kind of weird kind of sameness to them. They all have weird, odd coincidences or incredibly unlikely things that happen to them in their backstory that are funny and kind of, sad or whatever.
Right.
However, having said all that, it could just be that it's just me. That it's just this was a kind of a movie that, part of me wonders if I had seen this movie having never seen a Christopher Guest movie, if I'd be loving this movie. Or if I'd never seen...
Yeah.
This seems like a very... Now that we live in a world with The Office, that I think stole a lot of its construction and setup from Christopher Guest.
Yeah.
Now, this seems like just something we've seen a million times before, even though this is a new movie. And it didn't hit me. I do suspect, now that we're talking this out, I do suspect I would have liked this a lot more if I'd never seen another Christopher Guest movie.
I guess that would be true. I really liked it, but like I said before, I think Mascots are really funny. So, you put like Christopher Guest's movie plus Mascots.
Right.
It's going to work for me.
Yeah.
I actually thought this movie had a lot of affection for its characters. So it's interesting that you're thinking maybe it crosses the line.
Yeah.
I didn't like the married couple.
Right.
That one I thought was really mean and nasty.
Yeah.
And they're kind of the only characters in the movie who don't go through any kind of change.
Mm-hmm.
Like their story is the same from the beginning to the end.
Yeah.
Really.
And now that you're saying
and
that,
then they're so nasty to each other.
I think that that's the couple I'm thinking of. And I don't know because she's a little bit overweight or something, but there were moments in the movie where it kind of felt like they're not laughing with this woman, they're laughing at her, and it just didn't seem cool.
Yeah,
but not but you can laugh at you can have characters in a movie that you're supposed to laugh at and do something, but it's almost like kind of the current term for it is like punching down. It's like if you think mascots are silly and you think people that do mascotting are silly and you think these contests are silly, even though you have them in all of your movies, then why are you making this movie? Like if you think all this stuff's dumb and these people are dumb and they're just doing dumb things and they're have these mediocre lives, because that's the thing is a lot of them are.
He thinks that.
What was that?
I don't think he thinks that at all.
He probably doesn't, but it's starting to feel like, man, he keeps hitting this. Wow, now this could be another thing. In Woody Allen movies, he's dating for a long time. He dated younger women,
right?
A lot. It was a big thing, and man, watching Manhattan now is crazy. I know I'm the 20th person.
Right.
The 20,000th person to say this at this point. Anyway, and then you come to find out years later, the subtext playing out through all his movies was like front and center is in his life and in his thinking on the world. And I'm not saying that Christopher Guest is anywhere like that, but the fact that he keeps coming back to this tone and hitting these chords with this strata of people has me wondering.
I think it's because he likes those people.
Probably. It is. I will not rule out the possibility that I'm completely misreading this. So I will fully upfront say that. Take it with a grain of salt. It's been a while since I've loved a Christopher Guest movie, so maybe Christopher Guest is not for me. So those are my review disclaimers, which may or may not tie in to our next segment. Do you have anything else you'd like to say on Mascots?
I want to know, what do you rate it?
I rate it a 4.5 out of 10.
I think it's more like a 6.5 or 7.
Okay, that's
really
cool.
liked it.
Yeah, that's cool. See, once you get below 4, then a movie is like, this movie's irritating me.
Right.
I'm no longer indifferent to it. A 5 is just like, I could care less. Either way. Once you get below 4, it's, I really didn't like this part and these people. And, once you get south of 3 or 2, then it's just like, let me give you, here's the stack of my report on what I straight up hated about Terminator Genesis.
Yeah. Well, speaking of reviews, let's move on. Cool. This segment is brought to you by Insecurity. Satisfied with your job, but you want to worry about Sarah in accounting and how everyone likes her more? Or do they? Maybe she's just a nice person. I'm a nice person. Then you need Insecurity.
Topic 3, reviews and reviewers. How do you find a reviewer that helps you in this world awash with culture and pop culture and stuff coming out several times a day, every week of every year? Books, movies, televisions, podcasts. It sounds like I'm talking about something that's vaguely familiar, but I just can't place it. How do you find a reviewer, or how do you think about reviews to help you kind of go through this morass? And I will admit, I might have a pet peeve. I love Terry Gross's Fresh Air. It's got some of the most informative, most meaningful interviews in journalism today. It is a national treasure, Terry Gross and what she does. However, she has got this inexplicable love of jazz. And when I say inexplicable, you'll hear it here in a second. I do not understand. If aliens were to come down from space and listen to Terry Gross's show, you would think jazz constitute 90% of all human music. It is just completely out of balance. It is just bizarre. Now, and usually I'm all fine with just like blowing it off or whatever. But on the October 3rd edition of, I was going to say Dorking Out, of Fresh Air, there was a critic, nice guy I'm sure, Kevin Whitehead, jazz critic for Fresh Air, and he talked about Andrew Cyril's 2 new albums. And I gotta say, for my money, this was the worst review, the most, maybe not the worst, the most intensely irritating review for me that I can remember. Sonia Mansfield, to
Yes.
tee up our discussion, can you play cut 1?
Andrew Cyril with tenor saxophonist Bill McHenry from their duo album, Proximity. The drummer contains multitudes, and 2 contrasting new records on different labels only hint at his range. Proximity is all about the drums and their melodic potential, and we'll get back to it. Cyril's other album, for quartet, is more about atmospheres and soundscapes where you can't always tell who's playing what. That record's called The Declaration of Musical Independence.
My God, is just, it's almost like every stereotype of hipsters, and I'm not one of these guys that loves to rail on and on about hipsters. It's almost like every stereotype has been injected into that thing. The music is just meh. The way he talks about it is just so hoity-toity and self-important and whatever. The drummer contains multitudes.
Could it just be you don't like jazz?
It could be. I'll admit that. But, now, do you like jazz?
I'm indifferent.
Okay. Listen to that music.
Like, if people play it, I'm like, that's fine. But it's not what I listen to.
Right. But I have listened to jazz that I do like. And there's a lot of jazz. This is the kind of jazz that gives jazz a bad name. And as we go on, but the way that he talks about it is kind of, he's trying to be hyper-verbal and trying to figure out very $10 word ways of talking about this drummer's, multifaceted. He can do a lot of stuff. He's a good drummer.
Avant-garde jazz, which, from what I understand, is pretty difficult to play, and I imagine it's probably pretty difficult to review.
It might be, and maybe that's kind of what we're talking about. And, maybe I am being too hard on Kevin Whitehead, but Sonia Mansfield, can you play the next clip for me?
In those rare moments when Andrew Cyril's quartet plays in tempo, his drums are very much part of the conversation.
Those rare moments when he plays in tempo?
The liveliest tune is Richard
His drums are part of the conversation. What are you talking about?
Composer on piano.
Now I ask you, what is the difference between that piece of music and the sound of a truck carrying musical instruments getting into a crash?
I was just going to say, it sounds like the orchestra's warming up.
Exactly!
Jazz is not my bag, baby. So, I don't know.
But look, because I sent this to you. We've been talking for a while about doing this. I sent this to you a while ago. What did you get out of this? Actually, you know what? Play the last one, and then we'll, So not only have we heard all those, listen to this last chunk, and I love the Declaration of Musical Independence. It reminds me of that Simpsons joke where there was like some teeny bopper in the '60s that made us an album, and then his next album was this hyper patriotic album, the Things I Believe or something, and it was like him looking really serious, and I think in like a green beret suit, and there was like the Lincoln Memorial behind him, and it's just, I'm going to tell you what this country is all about. It was just, the Declaration of Musical Independence. It's like that kid in junior high that's really good at the sax, but doesn't know anything and hasn't been 200 miles away from the town he was born in. His first album. That's what that kid would name his first album. This is the second most talented musician in high school's first cut. Anyway, sorry.
Favorite thing about this review is how much you hate it.
So play the last clip.
Okay.
Andrew Cyrille is such a team player on his quartet album. He can leave you wanting more drums. And for that, there's the duo record Proximity, where his trap set is fully exposed and saxophonist Bill McHenry doesn't get between it and us. Cyrille's tour de force is his drum set version of Leadbelly's dance ditty Green Corn. The clackety playing on the rims harks back to early jazz great Baby Dodds.
Now, tell me if I'm wrong, but can't you imagine a music teacher walking out of his office and screaming and hearing that and saying, "Hey, you kids, get out of here. Put that down." It's like a couple of the jocks stumbled into the music room, picked up the drumsticks, and just started wanging on stuff. That's the sound they would have made.
I just feel like this isn't my type of music.
Okay, but
I feel like I can't really speak to it, and I have to say his review didn't help me understand it.
Exactly. That's exactly my point, and I'm having a little fun with Kevin Whithead, and I hope he's not one of our listeners and he's gonna stop listening. But that's the thing that really irritated me, because this music is not for me.
Yeah.
It's just avant-garde jazz. I like a little bit more melody in my music. However, listening to somebody that is deeply into a kind of art talk about that art does reveal something, and that's one of criticism's great contributions to things. Even if the movie that they're talking about, or the show they're talking about, or the piece of music they're talking about is not for you, the way they discuss it is just really meaningful. And my God, the way Kevin Whitehead talked about this is just a bunch of word salad, gobbledygook, the smart guy on the quad of the college trying to impress girls. That just drives me up the wall. But Sonia Mansfield, 1, what did you think of this review when you listened to it? And 2, what do you look for? Let's segue into our larger topic. What do you look for in a reviewer?
When I listened to the review, I just thought, well, this music isn't for me, and he's not. I just didn't understand it. And I didn't understand the review. I'm not going to lie. I was like, he wasn't convincing me that it was something I should check out. Not that it's his job to sell it to me, but I didn't understand the music, and he didn't explain it to me, to the point where I actually had my husband listen to the review and had him explain it to me.
Okay. What did David think of this?
Well, he's the one. He also said, he's like, well, maybe it's just not your guys' type of music. He seemed to think it was fine.
Okay. Yeah, no, I get it.
So, and I was like, that's fine. And I'm like, but what I want from reviews is, I want to know, is this for me?
Right.
So I want to know what the movie, but I want to know what it's about, and I want to know like what the tone is. Like I'm speaking more about like movies and TV shows and books and stuff, because I don't really read music reviews and things like that. I like a balanced review that points out what works and what doesn't work. But I grew up reading Roger Ebert.
Right.
He's my favorite. I have not replaced Roger Ebert. Like, I don't even have a new movie critic that I like to read, like, as much as I liked Roger Ebert. And one of the things I loved about him was he could tell you what worked, what didn't work. And, even if he liked something, I could still, like, my tastes were aligned with him, and that I could tell, like, well, that's still not for me.
Right.
Because I knew him so well.
Right.
And so he introduced me to a lot of movies, and I think he, also saved me from watching a lot of movies that weren't for me.
Right.
And, I think my love of movies is influenced by, probably my parents who really love to watch movies, and Roger Ebert. Well, here's the other reason I loved Roger Ebert so much. He knew what he was talking about.
Right.
There's a knowledge of the subject, and it's not enough to be like, well, I saw the movie and I liked it. Like, you need to have some knowledge, and so you can give us some context.
Exactly.
And when I was talking to my husband about the jazz review, he said that what he really looks for in reviews is he likes influence and comparisons.
Right.
Influences and comparisons. So he told me how the reason he ever saw the movie Delicatessen was because a movie critic had described it as Brazil meets a Tex Avery cartoon.
Wow. That sounds fantastic.
Yeah.
I don't think I've seen Delicatessen, and now I want to see Delicatessen.
Yeah. See, because whatever critic he read did a really good job. That's somebody who has knowledge of the subject and can put it in context for you, and knows about, who the influences are and can make comparisons. That's a good critic.
Yeah. See,
what do you look for?
Well, that's the thing is I look for a lot of the same things. And for me, the thing that was so perfect about Roger Ebert and why all reviewers, should try to emulate him is he probably knew more about movies than any film professor, most directors, nearly all actors out there. But he was able to talk about it in a very conversational, very accessible, a way that respected the audience that he was talking to and the film that he was talking about. I think one of the things that I look for... He
didn't sound like a snob. He sounded like someone you could be like having dinner with after the movie.
Exactly. And I think one of the things that irritated me about the jazz thing is the guy sounded like just a ridiculous snob. If you were to watch a movie where they were going to make fun of National Public Radio and Terry Gross's show, they could just pull out this review, plop it into the movie, play it as is, and it would make all of their satirical points without being touched. And it's where the critic is not trying to relate to a movie. Sometimes I almost want to not call them critics or call them reviewers. I want to call them guides, which is I'm going to take you from this place of not knowing if you should go see this movie. I'm going to tell you what I know. I'm going to give you a little bit of expertise, and I'm going to describe, the journey that this movie's trying to go on. And if that's for you, great. If not, that you can kind of step on by. And Roger Ebert was just fantastic about it. And that's the thing. Is the reviewer trying to review the movie, or are they trying to present themselves? And I think what a lot of reviewers online, unfortunately, they kind of get more out of the performance of a movie review in that, they might not like a movie that much, but it's fun when you want to bash a movie to just go nuts on it.
Yeah.
Which is what I've done here a little bit with Kevin Whitehead to just have
I
a little
think
bit
I've
of fun.
been guilty of this. I used to review movies back in the day, and I
Right.
think for sure, like, it was easy for me to write a bad review and just fill it with a bunch of jokes and be mean. And
Right. And
and honestly, it's lazy.
Yeah.
Like, I'm the first one to point out that probably a lot of my reviews were cop outs and lazy.
yeah, and I've definitely fallen into that trap. So the question is, before you start talking about the movie, is I kind of need to know a little bit who you are, which is why we have a segment on our show that we probably should pick back up again. Why should I listen to you? Where,
Yes.
we tell you who we are, tell you the movies we like. I almost want every critic, like if you're going to be a jazz critic, what are your 10 best jazz albums? If you're going to be a television show, what are your 10 favorite TV, shows? Just so I have some sort of idea of who you are. And then, but this is another big thing that Roger Ebert was fantastic at. And I think some of his more colorful fights with Gene Siskel came down to, are you reviewing the movie that the makers intended to make, or are you reviewing the movie that you wanted to see?
Yeah.
And, it's funny. I think when Godfather 3 came out, Gene Siskel just lit it on fire. And if I remember correctly, Roger Ebert says, well, that might have been the next Godfather movie you wanted to see, but that's not the one that Coppola made. That's not anywhere near the one Coppola made. So you can't run down the movie that's sitting here. I think actually Gene Siskel also did this with Stanley Kubrick's Full Metal Jacket.
Oh, yeah. I was going to bring this up.
Where he gave...
It's like a famous episode.
Yeah, he gave Full Metal Jacket a thumbs down.
Yeah.
And Full Metal Jacket is one of the greatest war movies of all time, but it's one of the lesser Stanley Kubrick movies.
Yeah. In that same episode, he gave a thumbs up to Benji the Hunted.
That's right. See,
and he was like, what the hell is wrong with you? They were fighting. And then it came down to, well, Benji the Hunted, like, aimed lower and hit it.
Yeah.
And Full Metal Jacket aimed higher and missed. And it's like, so if a movie aims higher but doesn't quite hit it, it's a thumbs down. But if you aim low and hit it, then you're thumbs up.
Exactly. Well, see, that's the thing, though. There is a kernel of truth in what Siskel was saying.
Right.
There's a lot of, there's been some research on this that some genres have average higher scores than other genres. On average, horror movies, romance movies, or romantic comedies definitely have lower scores.
What about Benji movies? How are their scores?
I don't know exactly. I haven't seen the latest numbers. Dramas on average have a higher score because critics, they like, on average, they like certain things more than they like other things. And it's not fair. I've seen a lot of horror movies that just get dumped on, and you go watch them, and it's like, this is scary, freaky. I had a good time at the thing. Why is this movie getting bashed? But it's just like, they're kinds of movies, and I think a lot of comedies are like this. And Adam Sandler has kind of gone through this in his career, where the critics just, he's just a bozo, and he's just shooting low and making dumb comedies, and so they kind of, take shots at him.
Well, he is doing those things.
He's doing those things now, but they were saying that during his first run of movies, and his first 3 or 4 movies are pretty good.
Yeah, they're fun.
As mindless comedies, they're great. And that's the thing is, if you go in, if a critic goes in to meet the movie where the movie's at, and then kind of judges it on those terms, I really like. And that's what Roger Ebert was just great at, is he was not going to go in and light Jim Carrey's Liar Liar on fire, because what he really wanted to see was, Jim Carrey in a Charlie Kaufman movie or whatever. He was going to go in and say, this is a dumb, broad comedy. Does it make me laugh? And, yes. Was it enjoyable? Yes. Well, I'm giving it a thumbs up, even though, if you compare this movie to Godfather 3, it's
right.
ridiculous. So I guess that's a kind of, and I think, I meant to say this earlier, there's a lot of online critics with the whole rage about, trying to get attention and trying to spark a discussion or trying to spark something, is they just are relentlessly nasty. It's fun to be nasty. It's fun to run things down. And I think that's one of the reasons that I haven't been able to really find a critic after Roger Ebert. Actually, Kenneth Turan I kind of like. Now that I'm done bashing NPR reviewers. Kenneth Turan from the LA Times, and he's on Morning Edition a lot. I like him. But yeah. So do you have any other thoughts or is there anybody that you listen to? I guess you listen to we both listen to Patrick Bromley.
Yeah, on F This Movie. I like him a lot. And I like, all the people he has on too. I listen to their opinions and those matter. And I think I've been listening to his show long enough that I know like kind of where my tastes align with his. And so, if even when he talks about movies that I don't like, because he super loves horror movies, and like not all horror movies are going to be for me. Like I can say like, yeah, that sounds like it might be a really good movie for someone who likes horror movies or something like that. So, that's probably the person I listen to the most. But reading wise, like I really just haven't found that person to replace Roger Ebert.
Actually, there is a guy, he goes by the name of Capone on Ain't It Cool News. He's out of Chicago, and actually he's been on the Film Spotting podcast quite a bit. But I don't really listen to Film Spotting all that much anymore. And he's pretty good. He's open to a lot of different kinds of genres. And, because you kind of have two broad swaths of critics, and I'm being very generalizing here. You have the New Yorker type critic who, when they go into a comic book movie, just wants to kind of kick it around. And, comic book movies, they can only be so good or whatever. And then you have, I don't want to say like a mass market critic or like just a more broadly open critic like Capone that can enjoy a good comic book movie and also enjoy a good, Charlie Kaufman movie or, whatever the new latest indie movie is.
Yeah. Well, if our listeners would like to share who they like to read, I have an opening.
That's right. Who is a good critic that we can pay attention to?
Yeah, like I have TV critics I like to pay attention to, but I still haven't found like the movie critic that I like.
Dana Stevens. Boom. Dana Stevens from Slate. My God, how did I not mention Dana Stevens?
Okay, there you
fantastic.
Go. I will go read Dana Stevens.
She's on the cultural podcast, Slate's cultural podcast, and she's great.
Okay.
Tip. Kevin, if you're listening, I'm sorry. I love you, man. Actually, you know what? Kevin Whitehead has a book. It's called Why Jazz? It's on Amazon. Go buy it. I'm sure it's great. He did not answer that question for me in his review. But we can't have everything in life. On to our favorite headlines.
And that brings us to our favorite headlines of the week. I guess because I'm introducing, I'm going to go first. Take that, Smith.
I'll take it, Mansfield.
So my favorite headline of the week is the Fantastic Beasts. They are planning 5 movies. 5 movies for this movie that hasn't even come out yet. I don't even know what to think about that. I was already worried that Fantastic Beasts was kind of like The Hobbit.
Well,
like they were planning like 3 movies.
It might be. Well, because didn't she say
and now there's 5.
Yeah, didn't she say in this announcement that when people see what they're planning with these movies, things are going to get really interesting?
I hope so. I mean, I like the Harry Potter movies a lot. I really like her a lot, but I am a little worried. The previews for Fantastic Beasts doesn't get me super excited, but I'm willing to give it the benefit of the doubt. But it's really crazy to me to hear, like, we have 5 movies planned and the first one hasn't even come out yet.
Right.
It seems a little presumptuous.
Right. Well, no, that's definitely true. Let me see here. Keep talking while I research a tiny thing that I thought I saw.
I'm like, what happens if the movie comes out and it's just a huge bomb?
That's right.
Like, would they even bother with the other ones, or
No, I don't think so.
Are they committed?
That's interesting. I'm wondering how long it will be before studios stop pre-announcing a lot of stuff, because Sony famously stepped in it with their entire Spider-Man series of movies that crashed and burned.
Right.
Universal announced a Universal Monsters connected universe that Dracula Unborn or something, or one of the Dracula movies that came out recently was supposed to be the kickoff, and that, who knows where that went.
Yeah.
I think they're still working on them.
They announced a Ghostbuster sequel.
That's right.
To happen, I'm sure. Like,
I'm sorry, Sonia, but I have to correct you. They announced a Ghostbusters connected universe.
Right.
Where they were going to have a prequel. They announced not only this movie, not only the sequel, not only the spin-off with men, they announced a prequel.
Wait, Ghostbusters that are men?
Yeah,
What?
that's right. They announced a prequel movie that was then going to serve as the basis for bringing the male Ghostbusters and the female Ghostbusters together in this kind of Avenger-style whatever.
And now none of that's probably happening.
Exactly. So, apparently...
Like, wouldn't it be smarter to just wait until the movie comes out and it does really well, and you're like, hey, you all really like this movie, good news.
That's what I would do. I would wait until the first one comes. Still have all these meetings. Well, you know what? Yeah, still have all the meetings. Still tell your shareholders that this is what they're planning, but shut up about it already.
Yeah.
What it looks like is Warner Brothers is leaning heavily on J.K. Rowling because she doesn't have any more Harry Potter books coming out, apparently. But we've heard that before.
Right.
So this new series is going to have a younger Dumbledore in it at certain points. It may or may not feature a younger or a rise of Voldemort type situation. But according to Birth Death Movies, the characters are searching for a Gellert Grindelwald. Potter fans, please don't yell at me. Who's not only referenced a handful of times, but appears to be the central focus of Rowling's new series. He is, I believe I'm correct, kind of the big bad guy. The biggest bad wizard other than Voldemort that the wizarding world has ever seen.
Wasn't he like Dumbledore's best friend for a while or something?
Exactly. That's the thing, is he was Dumbledore, and this was in the Deathly Hallows, and he was Dumbledore's friend, but then they split apart, and, evil. And I think that he kind of did all this stuff on continental Europe and Britain was kind of mainly saved from his wrath. But then Voldemort rose in Britain and all that.
Right.
If I have misremembered any of my Harry Potter lore, Harry Potter fans, please forgive me, but sometimes people forget things, so I'm sorry. You'll be fine.
It'll be fine. What is your favorite headline of the week, Smith?
My favorite headline is something that happened on this very podcast.
It's very exciting.
It is very exciting. On last Friday, on our special bulletin number 4, we reacted to the Star Wars Rogue One final trailer. A guest on that podcast, who shall remain nameless, guest on that podcast, a stranger to us named David Tracy, who for some reason is also going to be heading up our Star Trek Discovery podcast when we get going with that. But enough digression. He talked about how cool would it be if Netflix did a 10-part Knights of the Old Republic show. Wow.
It would be like a Star Wars TV show, kind of more adult.
Right. A Game of Thrones style thing. And the way that they described it is the way that we described it on the podcast, which is you got your Marvel movies, and they're kind of kid-friendly or, family-friendly and on the big screen. Then you have your Marvel shows on Netflix, which are essentially rated R HBO shows. So we were thinking, all right, it'd be great if Knights of the Old Republic had a more adult tone and was on Netflix, and it would be great. Wouldn't that be great? Well, apparently, one of you listeners, who shall remain nameless, listened to our podcast on Friday, got into a time machine, went back in time 2 months, and started a petition because there's no other explanation for the fact that this petition's been out there for a while, describing nearly this identical idea. It had to have come from us. So my favorite headline is that Star Wars fans are petitioning Netflix for a Knights of the Old Republic show that is more grown up and for adults.
I would totally watch that show. It sounds awesome. It would be my new favorite show.
It would, yeah. And now that I'm thinking about it, because that's the thing is, Netflix is, how many billions of dollars are they dropping on programming? Isn't it like, I want to say it's like $6 billion?
Is it really that high?
It could just be $1 billion.
They're spending a lot of money on those the Marvel shows.
That's right. Here, say something insightful and meaningful while I find out how much Netflix is spending on
something insightful and meaningful. I got nothing.
Come on. It'll cover the sound of my typing and doing research on the fly.
Nope. I got nothing.
Oh, wow. All right. So we got a story here. Netflix's $5 billion budget is setting off an arms race in cable.
Yeah. Well, all of their shows look really great.
They are fantastic. Let's see.
And, I think the money's on the screen there.
Right. All right. So, according to...
So what's one more billion to get like a Star Wars show going?
Exactly. That's the thing is if you're Netflix and you could have a Star Wars show, because these big prestige miniseries on HBO usually go for about $100 to $150 to $200 million. If you just dropped, well, I guess it would be 10. If you drop $500 million, that would be 10% of their entire budget on one show. So that would be kind of dumb. But I cannot imagine the amount of new subscribers they would get desperate for 10 hours of adult Star Wars.
They would.
Our entire generation.
Be careful when you refer to it as adult Star Wars, by the way.
Well, yeah, that's true.
It sounds a little like Star Wars After Dark.
Well, that is true. But I think a lot of people of our generation, and this is one of the reasons we bash on the prequels, and we've talked about this before, didn't like the prequels is because they were hoping for essentially a grown-up Star Wars. They were hoping for Game of Thrones with lightsabers, which they were fools to hope for. But if they could get one on Netflix, my God, the pent-up demand for that content is, I suspect, massive.
I would be really into it.
So
this wouldn't be a case of like, oh, Sonia watched the first 5 episodes and didn't finish.
That's right. Which is funny. At some point, we do need to get back to Luke Cage. I did watch it. We do need to talk about it. But if that show had been 7 episodes instead of 13, I think things would have been quite a bit better.
Well, I still haven't finished because baseball playoffs started, but I will try really hard.
Well, you're a Giants fan, is that right?
Yeah, and they're out now, so I have time on my hands.
Yeah, what do you care? So this reminds me of the time I went after your brother-in-law for being a Raiders fan 7 short hours ago. And on that note, that obscure reference, I think that's enough for today. Sonia Mansfield, do you have anything you would like to say?
I will just say goodbye.
Bye!
The Dorking Out Show is on Twitter at Dorking Out Show, where you can find Chris at Jet Jurgens and Sonia at The Sonia Show. You can read about Sonia's random adventures at thesoniashow.com and track the slow and creeping progress of Chris's novel and his other hijinks at jetjurgens.com. You can find out more about the Dorking Out Show at dorkingoutshow.com. While you're over there, you can support us by giving us a review on iTunes. We have a handy-dandy iTunes link to whisk you right back to 2007, where you can leave your review and 5-star rating in iTunes. We'd do it for your podcast. Want to dork out even more? Well, you can sign up for our newsletter, where you'll get all the headlines we use as fuel for the show. That's it for this week. Thanks for listening.